Welcome to another episode of Galactic Ambassadors podcast. My name is Julia Balaz, and today I'm thrilled to introduce to you Cassandra DeAnn. She is our recently certified quantum soul guidance practitioner. She's also certified in human design and gene keys. I am very fond of both these modalities. I believe they are exceptional systems that can reveal so much. They can offer immense value that in terms of information that can guide us towards our higher potential, greater well-being, deeper understanding of who we are, why we came, what are our gifts and qualities, what are the challenges. Such rich systems. I believe both were channeled, right, by their creators.
Yes.
So we can talk more about these. I'm really excited about this podcast and looking forward to learn about your journey and just feel the beautiful light and excitement that is always oozing from you when you engage with something that you're clearly passionate about, Cassandra. So welcome. How are you today?
Oh, thank you so much, Julia, for having me. I am just so excited to be here, a part of this program, a part of this day, talking to you here and now. And yes, doing very well.
I'm so glad. You're really most welcome. Just to mention, today is 2nd of April when we're recording this. It seems like everyone is already feeling the approaching eclipse energies. Yeah, we can talk about that later perhaps, but a very potent time. You know, before we started recording, we had a little chat about what it feels like to become certified and then be listed on the recommended practitioners page on the galacticastrology.com website. Would you like to share a little bit how that has been? It's over a month or even 2 since you've been certified and listed. Is that right?
Yeah, it's crazy how the time has just flown by, and I have enjoyed this so much. I have had multiple people come to me, and I just absolutely love this work. I love connecting people with people on this level and, revealing and sharing with them, their soul's journeys and where they've been and, connecting them to those aspects of their galactic heritage. It's just brings me great joy.
I'm so glad to hear that, and really well done for following your passion, following your heart. You know, both gene keys and human design are such exceptional modalities. Working with two of them combined, what was the impulse that you had when you first time came across the galactic aspect to our journey? And when was that moment? Can you share?
Yeah, absolutely. So the story is quite interesting because I grew up in a religiously abusive home and didn't really entertain anything, to do with spirituality. And I experienced a spontaneous awakening. And upon that, my first sort of introduction to the spiritual realms was through astrology. And I loved astrology, but one day, one of the astrologers I followed was studying in human design. And that was the first time I heard about it. When I first crossed my path, I was not too interested at first, but as I've grown to learn, if the universe wants you to know something, it will continue to kind of put it in front of you. And so ultimately, I ended up looking up my human design chart, absolutely falling in love with it. And when I had my awakening, I tend to be a very logical person normally, and I liked the system feel of human design. I was slowly spoon fed the galactic pieces from the get go, really, of my awakening experience, stumbling upon someone who said, get a Dolores Cannon book, and told me what my soul origins were, but I wasn't quite ready yet. And so I went down the path of human design, which allowed me to really understand who I am. And that kind of opened the door to the gene keys, which is a little more esoteric. So once again, kind of putting my foot in the water a little bit deeper. and experience incredible, unexplainable experiences and transformation through the deep work of the Gene Keys. And the universe kind of brought me back around to my galactic connections. I stumbled upon Ulrika Sullivan on a podcast, and I listened to her share astrology. And it was just, it lit my soul up. It was like nothing I ever had heard. And I kind of felt completely drawn to galactic astrology. I felt like it was calling me back towards the fulfillment that I was looking for, the deeper levels that I wanted. I just am at a point now where my soul was like, I say yes. I want to know all the things. And it's just been so exciting. It lights me up. It inspires my inner child to connect and learn so much about not only my own soul's journey, but, also seeing how incredibly accurate it is and how much it resonates for the people that I am able to share this with.
Oh, amazing. When it really feels so strongly right, you can't say no to life when it guides you this way. What a blessing to experience that kind of clarity and certainty in following something that is presented to you. I notice you've mentioned that you know yourself perhaps more so in the past to be a very logical person and you like the systems. However, I have to comment on, just from me observing your beautiful contributions in our private Facebook group for quantum soul guidance practitioners, you shared such rich divings into whichever star system you commented on, the journeys that were kind of opening up for you. It seems very natural, like it's a really rich psychic ability that seems to come to you so naturally. So I was surprised by that comment that you feel more logical, but has this always been that way, that kind of psychic intuitive side, or did it kind of start coming online after your spiritual awakening?
It definitely started coming after, because of my upbringing. I was very conditioned not to have any sort of sense of self. And it was, the people in my life pretty much carried me. And I didn't trust my intuition. None of this, all of it was foreign to me. When I had my spiritual awakening journey, it was like a muscle that over time kind of strengthened. And to the point where, it takes a lot surrender, right, to be able to connect to those intuitive notions. You have to trust yourself, trust the universe, trust, the process. So it's been honestly a journey to get there for sure. But one thing why I love galactic astrology, considering these two sides of myself, is I found that my process of reading, what I love doing, is connecting to the Akashic Records first and having all those downloads, and then looking at the chart. And then when you see all the dots connect in the perfect houses and the perfect signs, and, you can just trace the storylines, it just feels like a warm embrace from the universe to me. It just feels so magical. I absolutely love it. But it has been a journey getting there. I would say my strongest sense is clairaudient. That was what came on first. And I would just get sort of one word. And I wouldn't really understand, but over time, and actually a year to the date of my awakening journey, I ended up having a download where I had a full-fledged running voice that I had access to. And my clairaudient gift is probably my strongest, for sure.
I'm so glad you're sharing the process of the gradual opening of the psychic abilities, because many people expect for it to just, once you set the intention to start working with your clairs, whichever the extra sensory perception you focus on, People seem to be really frustrated when it's not coming along, but you have to kind of commit to it and almost prove how much you want it and are you really committed, because there comes great responsibility with something like this too. I'm glad you persevered. Absolutely. There is one question that comes through strongly in terms of the strong religious background. And I always come across the religious dogma against astrology, how strongly it is still broadcasted that it's a tool that should not be used, that it is against God's will. How did you work with those two opposing belief systems?
Absolutely. That's a really good question. I think that while I would love to say that I sort of came through that realization on my own, I feel like a lot of it was my openness was because of my spontaneous awakening. I just wasn't at a conscious level where I could felt permission to explore those things. Yeah, because how I was raised in fundamentalist Christianity, it was, that's of the devil. That's not good. That's not something you toy with. But when something unexplainable happens to you, you kind of have to reevaluate and look at everything. And my actual awakening process, astrology was a big part of it. The actual day it happened. So it was June 9th, 2021. And
is it okay to share the chart now?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So the eclipse took place in Gemini in my 9th house. And so how I feel, this was a solar eclipse. So when we're talking solar eclipse, we're talking about new beginnings, sort of fated or destined moments in which we are brought back. The universe brings us back on track. This means sometimes new beginnings. This can mean doors closing that force us into different paths. And so for me, this was my mind essentially was like blown open. It was in Gemini in my 9th house. Gemini, I always feeling this not only as like topics of communication, but I also really feel Gemini as a very curious energy that sort of can entertain, have that open mind of considering multiple different perspectives, ideas. And then when we look at the 9th house, looking at our beliefs, philosophy, those deeper things of how we consciously process things. And it's interesting because normally, Sagittarius rules the 9th house, which is wisdom. There was just so many layers to this. And I just right time, right place. And it just opened my mind. And that particular day, what was taking place was reflection through actually astrology. And so I had never listened to a podcast, and I decided to pull up a podcast. And for whatever reason it so happened, I found one that was talking about the 12 houses through two very young college girls, that it was presented as a very easy to digest basic level. But what I was processing, I can't even explain it. It was beyond what a usual comprehension would be of someone that was just introduced to these topics. It's like, it felt like it rose within my essence of knowing. And the next day, my friends, my husband, everybody that saw me were like, "Who are you? You talk
Wow.
different. You talk different. Your energy feels different. You do not feel familiar." And it was quite an experience of just completely reshaping my life.
Wow. Well, I'm so intrigued and so fascinated by looking at this chart, because what I'm also seeing is that this solar eclipse created a grand square, pretty much, the activating your natal Mercury in Pisces, and your Neptune was kind of on it too. So really special, bridging both the human mind and the higher intuition, and activating your natal Saturn in 12th house, or 11, kind of on the cusp of 11 and 12. in
Yeah.
Virgo, trining your ascendant with Pluto on the ascendant. My goodness, that's intense. So really incredible. Oh, and of course, then the Mercury also was squaring your natal Neptune in Sagittarius. So just so many different points were connected at the same time, really powerfully activated. One more thing I've noticed here, that transiting Uranus was on your vertex, which is
Yeah.
kind of on
Oh.
the cusp of the eighth house, which is kind of connected to astrology, oftentimes esoteric, deeper
Yeah.
awakenings, also linked to perhaps awakening memories from past lives, because it really feels so natural that all this comes to you so naturally. So I feel like you're remembering something before. And here we have, I wanted to mention the part of fortune, but it wouldn't be as powerful as the vertex point. I thought the part of fortune here is activating grand trine with your Uranus and Mercury on the MC. So you kind of naturally have that grand trine there with your midheaven, right? Uranus, Mercury on midheaven. Amazing. Really powerful. In terms of galactic astrology of the eclipse, you also shared that. So we have this awakening chart. And one thing I noticed when I scrolled through it, well, first of all, the eclipse was conjunct the stars of the Orion, and in particular Bellatrix. So here we have Mercury also conjunct Bellatrix in Orion. So solar eclipse was on the stars of Orion. And then in your natal chart, you have Orion stars sprinkled throughout your chart, and in particular Saturn is square Bellatrix in the 11th house, Saturn in Virgo. So to me that speaks potentially previous lifetime where you were involved in some sort of teaching, even as a priest, potentially being against astrology. It's just what's coming through here, where this time is the other way around. And I heard these stories so many times. Or it could have been the opposite way, where you were actually using, deeper wisdom from within your own being, but the dogmatic social systems were against you, where you felt suppressed. And so perhaps you've experienced an echo of that in your current incarnation, and you are guided to overcome that this time, which feels more accurate, even both could have been the case, because we have so many previous incarnations.
So I would say that it has been very challenging for me. And when I say challenging, I speak of it as on a soul level. I know a big part of my journey of evolution is feeling comfortable to come forward with my higher knowledge, knowing sense. That has been a journey. For sure.
Well, you have Alpha Hydrae star Alphard conjunct your North Node, I believe.
Yes.
So it is associated with wisdom carrier, someone who carries the deep feminine wisdom of the universe within their own coding, within their own kind of soul memories, and a few other alignments there that I feel maybe the later story is more accurate for you, where you have been doing this for many incarnations, being the seer, the guide, the healer, the teacher, and you are you're healing the wounds that so many of us experience by being prosecuted and all that. So I'm so glad you came out so beautifully, so wonderfully.
Thank you.
Can you share with us, how did you navigate external environment, any perhaps of your family members and their reaction when you claimed this new state of being and expression?
Actually, my family disowned me a year before my spiritual awakening, not for the first, but the second time. And I have come to great peace and understanding of this situation. I think that in life, we get so caught up in the polarity of things, and we sometimes forget on a soul level that when we come here, we come for the purpose of evolution, to have these experiences. And so a lot of times when I share my story, it can be hard for people to relate or understand. I have great love and gratitude for this experience because it's created and turned me into who I am today. And I think that that is testament to why this happened twice, because I think the first time I ended up falling into old behaviors, what was comfortable, what was safe, and trying to allow that heavier dynamic or that controlling narrative to sort of hold me within a reality that felt familiar to how I was raised. But the universe was like, oh, no, you wanted your soul on a soul level. You wanted to be where I am here today. And because of that, there were certain experiences that were shaping the opportunity, the perfect ingredients to get where I am here now today. So because of this, I feel like I was given, the two opportunities. And by the second time I was disowned, before my awakening, we tried after 9 months of no contact to regain connection. It was not working out. And I decided that I just it wasn't the path for me anymore. And I experienced such great freedom. I did a lot of healing, forgiveness. Later, while we are no contact, my mother has seen my work online and commented how it's of the devil and I should know better. But, it's one of the things that is so beneficial, I think, to learn is that, first off, we on soul levels choose our journeys. 2, we are here to evolve and grow. And 3, also, we can't do others' evolution for them. We can do ours. And so I can't do the work for my mother. The best I can be is my authentic expression of self in the world. And those that may help by hearing my story, then that's beautiful. That's how it's meant to be. But we're not really here to save or rescue anyone. They have to sort of do that work for themselves. We don't have any contact. It's been over 4 years now.
Thank you so much for your honesty and the beautiful integrity and higher wisdom that you share with us. I hope it'll help heal any viewers' trauma related to perhaps similar story. I would just like to add that with astrology as a tool, it can be used both ways for well-being of others or to harm others. And as long as our heart is pure, our intentions are pure, as any good tool, we can do a lot of good. And I love seeing in our community the focus on helping people understand their inner self in order to evolve, in order to make this world a better place in their own unique way where they can rise and shine, versus using astrology with the hyper fixation on predicting the future. I really don't like using this tool for that at all. I love the beautiful unfolding of life itself in its magical way, when things come to us in their own divine timing. So, like any tool, it can be used both ways. I appreciate you sharing your journey, and you can feel how there is no trigger and how beautifully at peace you are with who you are, how you walk this path ahead. So, you can really feel the difference between someone who still holds resentment and someone who is free. So I commend you and congratulate you for that. It's an inspiration to witness that. Well, shall we look at your beautiful website?
Sure. Yeah.
And wonderful job. You have this beautiful sense for what is nice, what looks good. And yet again, there is a conjunction to Hades star in your natal chart. I see it over and over again. So let me share the screen. If our viewers go to CassandraDeAnn.com, you can see your beautiful website. Do you know how awesome you are? Yay. And I have to say, every person that I know who reached a point where they recognize their own awesomeness, their own divinity, they are the most wonderful cheerleaders for others to recognize the same. These people, you're naturally able to be genuinely happy for others, shining and being wonderful. So it's so great that you.
Thank you.
Here is the tab that interests me the most. So people can book their human design session, Galactic Astrology. There's Galactic Resources page. I love that. People can book their reading, and you also have your podcast and your book. Where would you like to start? What do you feel most proud of from all these?
Well, my book is currently being manifested. So, it's not there yet, but it does share my awakening story and my religious challenging upbringing. Because when I was going through a lot of this, it is difficult to find resources that share. I think that toxic religious homes can be some of the most difficult to navigate out of those circumstances. So I'm working on that one. I hope to see it in publication in the next year. I think the thing I'm most excited about presently is my galactic resources, because I started to realize I wanted to have information available to help people kind of connect after their reading with the different storylines and these races. So I've started this process to where I have channeled visuals and included information through my own connection of Akashic Records. And in this also, there's some information coming from some of my favorite resources and books as well. So I love those. I'm pretty excited to keep adding. It's like little adventures I get to go on when I learn more about these stars. And then the Galactic Astrology link is new to my site, where I give a little bit of information about what it is. I talk a little bit about, our cosmic beginning, to the different services that I offer.
Beautiful.
Which I would say my favorite right now is probably the relationship reading, the galactic relationship.
Wonderful. And that's so interesting that you say that, because your chart has placements in the 7th house, which is the house of relationships. Isn't that fascinating how we navigate towards something that is active through astrology?
My journey in life has been finding who I am related to others, and codependency, people pleasing. A lot of those things can be challenges with having your sun in the 7th house of where are you versus others. And I've really enjoyed finding the balance between, those things. And most of the work I do, such as in human design, I really don't gravitate towards relational charts, but in galactic astrology, I've found that I really enjoy reading Akashic records of past relationships, because they are eye-opening to themes that we are reliving, presently working through.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I have to share the screen again and show those charts, because something just revealed itself. So here we were talking about the 7th house. Your natal sun is on descendant and your natal Pluto is on ascendant. So there's a very strong and powerful opposition, transformational experiences, very deep and intense experiences too. Where your sun shines in your chart is usually our we naturally gravitate towards that area of our life, and that's where we shine. Our identity, our path and purpose kind of usually points to that direction. For me, my sun is in the 11th house of higher ideals and ever-present optimism that I have, but in connection to humanity, to the collective. And I always think about how can we support human collective evolution. So that's what my sun is. But I was curious about your fourth house, because your upbringing was very challenging and transformational and helped you eventually blossom to who you are today. So your fourth house is actually empty. But if we look at the ruler of the fourth house, and this is something I was talking about in my recent podcast on our ancestral galactic astrology. So your fourth house is in Capricorn, the cusp of it. It starts in Capricorn, so it's ruled by Saturn. And your natal Saturn is on a cusp, almost at the end of the 11th house and the beginning of the 12th house. And interestingly, your natal Saturn is squaring Orion star Bellatrix. So there is a connection, I believe, to previous incarnations where your family members that gave you birth actually potentially, well, I'm not sure if I can say it because it's a strong statement. We can decide if we leave it in or take it out. They may have taken your life before in prosecution and now gave it back to you. So karma has been restored, and that's why there is ending, and you're not meant to almost be together because there was a karmic death that has been cleared. It's the Bellatrix, the Orion star, that is significant here because the eclipse that caused your awakening was conjunct this star. And that star then was, squaring the natal Saturn and Mercury in Pisces, which is connected to religion also, to religious beliefs. Neptune is there too. So this really looks like by the book validation of ancient story or previous incarnation story in connection to everything we've shared. And it's likely that the bloodline of the souls that were causing difficulty was connected to Orion in some way. One way or the other. So
I sometimes wish that I would be able to look at my parents' galactic astrology. I don't have the information, but what you said, I feel like it resonates, especially considering the past lives I know where there has been a lot of challenge. The only exception I've found in my records is I believe that this is what I have read in my records, and what really resonates with me is that my relationship with my actual mother is pretty new, and that we had joined or met through a life where I was an Octurian, and I agreed to reincarnate with her this life to sort of assist or help with her process. We'll see, that's, her journey there. But I know my father for sure. We've had multiple rounds that all have been having similar themes of challenge.
That would make sense because there is one of the, sun moon alignments. Moon is in Capricorn. And I want to ask you who was the more kind of masculine expression and who was more feminine expression within your family dynamic? Do you know?
Yeah, so my mother was more controlling.
So that's the sun in Aries, perhaps, or moon in Capricorn. Could be both, actually.
Well, I know she was a Sagittarius sun. That part I do, that I do know. But it's interesting because on one of your videos, I saw you refer to the energy of the father and mother through the houses, looking at the 4th and the 10th. And I definitely feel the energy of like the 4th house, mother, 10th house, more the Cancer. For me, that's Cancer. My father was protective and, more likely to nurture. And it's interesting in my clients' charts when I've looked at their 4th and 10th, it often is really good representation of the parentals.
I love that. And I'm so glad that we bring that in so that people really take a deeper look at, is it moon or is it sun that represents mother, father? So I also, looking at galactic astrology, it gives us some clues inclining that moon is the representation of your father's soul connection more so than the sun, because from what you shared, your natal moon is opposing Sirius A, which is connected to lifetime, connected to higher wisdom, spirituality in one way or another. It's sextile Crux, a Crux star, also strongly connection to history with religious organization system, and it's square Corvus Algorab. Also, whenever I see that in a chart, there is usually a story of a prosecution or some sort of wounding in relation to strong dogmatic beliefs that are blocking the natural psychic intuitive insights of others. So pretty fascinating too.
One thing in my galactic astrology and studying it, a life that I stumbled upon that was very transformative to me is, as I shared earlier, feeling like it's okay to use my intuition has been a challenge. And especially earlier in my awakening, I would say things, I would have experiences, but I would say, I promise I'm not crazy. I promise I'm not crazy. And, I looked at it as like, oh, you're just like this oddball, the odd, person. And I had this life that I stumbled upon in which it was earlier in my journey where I was captured and my psychic abilities, my natural abilities were used for service to self through another species. And this particular alignment is actually squared, which to me feels like karma in my 11th house, which I had this moment of feeling like I am, in a sense, repaying a karma of using my abilities for good with the collective, to uplift, to use them for positive. It's not about being that person that, oh, I have these abilities, but it's actually a service in which I am sharing in this life. So it helped me a lot with feeling like I could shift my perspective on how I show up in the world.
So powerful. Thank you. One more question that comes to mind is, before your kind of spontaneous spiritual awakening, what was the few years leading into that? Because I believe that when something like that happens, when you have this spontaneous opening and almost like this beautiful resolution of karmic connections that were so potently, strongly holding us limited, I believe that usually happens when we actually do the inner work leading into it. And I hope you will kind of validate that here. Have you been working on your inner frustrations and triggers, kind of taking personal responsibility for your inner experience of those challenging relationships? What was it like? What was your journey and focus few years leading to the spiritual spontaneous awakening?
I would say about 5 years prior, I had an experience that was sort of mystical, where ever since I was a child, I was seeing every night pretty much a presence in my room. About 5 years prior to my awakening, that was the first time I kind of like considered the possibility of something outside of religion, because ultimately I ended up seeing a visual face and I did not know who it was, and stumbled later upon a picture and realized that it was my grandfather, and which we never talked about family. We were very disconnected from all family. I didn't even know if my grandfather knew me. So I ended up kind of considering the possibility of something outside of religion. A friend encouraged me to go see a psychic, and the psychic within 5 minutes named that he was there and his presence was strong. But the first time something bad happened in my life, I fell into that religious narrative. Oh my gosh, what did you do, Cassandra? You opened the door to the devil. You now are going to have issues with possession and your life is going to be falling apart. So that was, shut that door. I honestly was fumbling a lot through life. I focused all of my energy through my career. At the time, I did not realize that my way to soothe my wounding from my upbringing was through validation. I am a creative. I worked in the wedding industry. I was there 10 years, never had a negative comment, never had anybody dissatisfied. I received one person say something negative about my work, and it felt like at the time my whole world crumbled. I did not understand what was going on. And it was probably 2 months after that is when I had my awakening. It did feel very out of the blue.
Okay, so there goes my theory out the window.
And I've been told that the situation is a little unusual. A lot of times there's, can be a death or something very tragic, but it just felt like my sense of what I was so desperately clinging to for security and safety was shaken. And with that, now the work I did afterwards was quite intensive. Lots of deep, deep healing and unlocking things. It was unusual.
Thank you. Yeah. And actually that made me realize and remember the many stories of spontaneous spiritual awakening or the Kundalini awakening that people have that just happens so unexpectedly and so random and really just changes their trajectory completely. And you don't have to do the inner work before something like that happens. So it can be either or. Yeah. But
it's neat.
Yeah. Brilliant. I can imagine you would be fabulous wedding planner, amazing wedding planner. I've done that for 3 years, I believe.
Yeah, I think I recall hearing that through. Yeah.
It was also in a beautiful setting, and I absolutely loved it. Yeah. Okay. Great. Awesome. Well, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience before we close, Cassandra? This was beautiful.
I think the only thing that I would love to add is that a lot of people, when they hear about galactic astrology, are like, why we're going down that path. Well, first off, I definitely believe that we're in times where things are changing as we move forward to the future. But I think one thing that I just really love about galactic astrology is understanding that, sometimes I think we kind of see just this life and we, get so wrapped up in this. And I just love the idea to really comprehend and understand that these storylines, whether it's collectively or personally, that we're playing out, come from somewhere. And by understanding our galactic history and understanding the journey our soul has been on, that this is why I love this work. This is why I feel this work is so important, because often these understandings really help us see a 360 view of everything and the things we're going through, and offers such. I signed up from your course, and one of the things you said is you will experience transformation. Mm-hmm. And it could not have possibly been more true. And I just absolutely love it.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much for sharing this journey with us. I feel excited about the potential of you connecting with many more wonderful people, having amazing magical experiences and covering incredible stories. We will watch the space. I believe we can subscribe to some of your social media channels if you go to your website. So I'm happy to stay connected. Super well done, and best of luck. Thank you all for watching. I look forward to seeing you next time. Much love.